Okay, all the crew members are going to take a couple moments to talk about a couple different days each on the mission. And you can see right after, actually before we launched and right after we launched, this is what the space station used to look like, asymmetrical as you can see. And here's our three anxiously awaiting crew members, Sonny Williams on the left there. The night before, when they rolled the RSS back, the shuttle is really a beautiful sight with the lights on it, just gorgeous. Day of launch, we're all marching out to the crew transport vehicle. The entire crew of seven, including Clay, our rotating ISS crew member. First one in the cockpit is always the commander, and there's our commander, Rick Sturko, getting situated in his seat real quickly, and on the middeck at the same time is JR. And here's myself climbing up next to the commander as I'm getting in.
Atlantis, launch director.
Atlantis, go ahead, sir.
Okay, CJ, it took us a little while to get to this point, but the ship's in great shape. It was a beautiful weather day for you out there, so good luck and Godspeed. We'll see you back here in about 12 days or so.
Launch director Mike Landbach.
And the beanie cap is going away?
Yes, I'm here, CJ.
Yep, let's do it.
We're go.
Norm Knight.
Booster concurs. Copy.
Working with his booster.
NSC, NTD, you go.
I'm go.
15 seconds before launch, you'll see the water deluge starting right there. And 6 seconds prior to launch, the main engine start. Things get real quiet after those solid rocket boosters leave us. Those are only with us about 2 minutes and 5 seconds. They get us to 150,000 feet in Mach 5. And here you can see right after main engine cutoff, about 8.5 minutes into flight, we jettison the external tank. Right away, Pat and Danny get going in a hurry to try and videotape the external tank for downlinking that imagery to the control center. Still on flight day one, right after that moment, you can see a whole slew of activities going on. Danny's in charge of photo TV equipment. I'm helping him out there with some of the cameras we're going to use the next day. Steve Swanson here in charge of the computers, getting a whole host of laptops ready. The commander, Rick Sturko, going over the timeline, making sure we didn't miss any critical activities. And down in the middeck, J.R. Riley in charge of the middeck, working with our rotating crew ISS member, Clay Anderson, getting the middeck in order. We open the payload bay doors right quick after we get to orbit. And then we, still on flight day one, take the robotic arm on and give that a checkout. It was during this checkout that Pat Forrester's, you can see Pat and myself working on the robotic arm, but during this checkout, Pat Forrester's sharp eye caught eye of the little bit of tear we had in the OMS blanket, and he got a good shot for the mission control using the camera on the robotic arm. We got that downlinked in a hurry. Flight day two, we took the OBSS, the survey, the boom that we used to do was survey the leading edge of the wings, make sure we didn't get any damage during ascent. And here we're at the end of flight day two, about 5.5 hours later of that survey, we go ahead and put the OBSS boom back in its place. At the end of flight day two, we had an OMS burn, and that you can see that. And here we're going to flight day three.
The big challenge for the space shuttles as soon as it leaves the launch pad is to try and catch up with the space station. So a series of burns are conducted, which bring us closer and closer to the space station, catching it 200 some odd miles above the surface of the Earth. And here you can see as we approach, we get a first visual on the space station at about 6 miles out, and as we get closer in, it gives us the opportunity to do a pitch maneuver and allows the on-orbit crew of the International Space Station to shoot various photography and video of the underbelly of the orbiter, also to verify that the launch was indeed clean and that we had no secondary damages associated with that launch. And here you can see the it's a pretty awesome sight coming to the space station, seeing all this hardware hanging out in the middle of nowhere. Certainly is very impressive, but it just even as you get in closer, it just doesn't look right. As we approach the final phases of docking, it really becomes very impressive, and you realize that things are really going to happen very quickly. And here, this is not exactly to the proper speed it up a little bit to kind of make things go, but you can see the awesomeness of the actual sequence. CJ flew an absolutely perfect, picture-perfect rendezvous to the space station. And once we docked, we get right down to business after a quick pressure check at the vestibule, is to open up the hatches and see our crew members, new crew members inside. There's Fyodor, Oleg, and Sonny, and needless to say, all of us were happy to finally get to this point. And it's part of a tradition that once we get on and dispense with the immediate greetings, is to present the on-orbit crew with a small gift. In this case, it was a T-shirt.
Then once we finally got on orbit, one of the first things we had to do on flight day 3, this was a pretty busy day for everybody on board. Pat and Brew were responsible for taking the handoff, and Pat's going to take the truss, which was the heaviest element of the space station so far lifted to orbit, lift it out of the payload bay with the robotic arm on the shuttle, and then they're going to do a handoff between the shuttle arm and the station robotic arm. And here you see Brew and Sonny getting that in place and ready to do the handoff on flight day 3. And while they're doing that, Danny and I are heading to the airlock to get all of our equipment ready for the EVA, which we're going to do on the next day and start hooking all this stuff up. And here in the animation, you can see what Brew and Sonny were doing when they took the handoff with the station arm, is to put this thing in position. Once it was in place the next day, and here you see Clay in the background, Oleg on the right, and Brew in the middle. They're going to bring this thing into position where the automated bolting could take place. That was critical before Danny and I could go outside. Down in the lower left, you can see the KU antenna moving on board the space shuttle as they were moving that up. In the meantime, on flight day 4, Danny on the left, me on the right, with help from Sonny and Swanee, are getting ready to go out and do the first EVA on flight day 4. And here you see us coming out of the hatch of the airlock. And here's Danny coming out for his first spacewalk. Our job was to connect the primary and secondary power cables and all the data cables, which bring the S3, S4 truss to life. Deploy the solar arrays, get them ready to deploy the panels the next day, and also release the radiator, which you see moving here. And the folks that got an award today, Janella Humans and Chris Schmidt, were instrumental in helping us get this device installed. And here you see us getting ready for the deploy, and as you can see, it's a full team effort. We've got everybody in the station there getting ready to deploy the arrays, as you see here. And it was a beautiful sight to see these things come out on flight day 5. We got both arrays are about 240 feet long, and of course all the help we had from folks on the ground. You see here Kelly Beck was a flight director on that flight.
Once we had those deployed, it was time to retract the 2B array, and it was a real team effort also. You saw Sonny was running the computer, CJ was kind of running the show with the cameras and the microphone, and then we had JR and Danny, or excuse me, on this first one, on EVA-2, it was Swanee and myself were out there. This is some of the helmet video where we had to cut a leader off before we could fold this thing up, a spring that had broken loose. And here was the team inside, JR running the show as IV. We got a little bit more retracted on that second EVA than we thought. There we are at the end of that particular portion. I'm on the boom on the right, and Swanee's there on the mass canister. Anyway, we're going to finish that up on EVA-3, and there's JR on the arm, this time on the left, and Danny on the mass canister. And they spent several hours out there, and as you can see, their work was rewarded by the fact that we were able to completely retract that solar array. There's CJ making some of the final calls, and there's Sonny very happy with what we were able to accomplish. So that was a little bit of EVA-2 and 3. There were some other things that we did on that third EVA, and of course one of them was to repair the torn OMS blanket. We did a little practice inside. That was Danny practicing with a surgical stapler. And then we put him on the shuttle arm with Brew and Swanee flying that, and we sent him out there. Here's some of his helmet video as he gets out in place and gets ready to fold that piece of blanket down. He did a great job. The first thing he did was push it in place, and then using that stapler that you saw him practicing with inside, did a great job of using that surgical stapler. There's Megan MacArthur and Kelly down in the control room, and Keith giving instructions and checking on things. Once he had it stapled, Danny used some pins to keep it in place on reentry. There was the team inside, CJ and Brew, and then myself as IV. While Danny was working on that, we had JR busy working on another piece of equipment just above the shuttle. So you could see he was just feet away from us outside, and he was installing an H2 vent. And this was the external portion of a system that was going to allow us to use an oxygen generator, which we'll need as we go to a crew of 6. Right after he had completed that, Clay and Sonny got to work inside in the lab and hooked up the rest of that portion internally so that the oxygen generator would work. We moved on to EVA-4 on flight day 10. That was Swanee doing some work. There we are both bringing in a keel pin as we clean the path that the MT, or the mobile transporter, would move along that path with a robotic arm. So we, at the end of EVA-4, had completed all the tasks that the crew had gone up to do, and it was time to come in. That was a great day. It was Father's Day, a Sunday afternoon, and we had accomplished the EVA mission that we had gone up to do, so we were very happy with that. Once we were inside, they would open the hatch, bring us in, and get us out of the suits. There's Swanee there on the left, and I'm on the right. The team was in there once again to get us out of the suits and greet us.
The next couple of minutes are about daily life on the station and the shuttle. Here, Sonny and I are rotating a rack on a node so she can get behind there and do some work. Here's Clay and Sonny and Brew transferring items from the station to the shuttle. You can see it's a little easier in the zero-G environment. Also, part of our daily regime would be to work out. Here I am on the red on the station, and JR's on the bike with the silver shoes. Sonny had a little problem reading the directions on the bike, but it still worked well. And of course, eating was a big deal every day. This is a wonderful shrimp cocktail, 3 ounces of cold water. Hit the button, fills it up. Wait about 10 to 15 minutes. And you have a meal. And of course, with any meal on the board there, you have to play with it first. Still tastes good. As you can tell, too, not only was playing with your food allowed, it was encouraged. And here Danny is working on a little experiment, 2 different colors of fluid, making them come together. And next, Pat is going to work on the infamous space eyeball swallowing trick. And near the end of our mission, we had the honor to put on our patch on the node wall and then have a wonderful meal over in the SM. We all enjoyed the Russian food tremendously. And again, playing with food was part of the item. Finger looking good. Every night we all had a little spot where we hooked up our sleeping bag. We'd crawl in or slide on in, zip it up, and put on our Dr. Locke eye blinds and head off to sleep. Each morning was pretty hectic. We all had our daily morning routines to go through. Here we are. We first started off from even brushing your teeth. And of course, going to the bathroom is next. And Rob, yes, we did learn how to do this correctly. Here, Danny's showing us how. I think we can all figure out what goes there and what that's for.
Okay, we have to take this to schools too, and that's what all the school kids want to know about. Just one last view of the space station. It was time to say goodbye to Fyodor and Oleg and Clay. They're still up there doing great work on the space station. Sunny had this streamer she had to swap out, and then she had to swap out her patch with, put Clay's patch up there on the forward bulkhead where you go out of the lab. We said goodbye to Fyodor, closed the hatches, and then we undocked from the space station. Brew was at the controls for this part of the mission, and he flew the space shuttle straight out the corridor, actually hugging the bottom just a little bit because that's where the best place to fly is, and he backed us smoothly away. Meanwhile, we were taking pictures of the exterior of the space station as soon as the sun came up. Pat wanted to get a picture for the montages that we give all the folks that looks just like this, which is just like our patch. So Brew had to delay just a minute on the V-bar till the sun got just right so Pat could shoot the perfect picture. And it turned out well. It was worth the effort. So a few item entries we have to type into the shuttle computers with the jets. And here's the station looking nice and symmetrical, as I mentioned earlier. We even had it flying behind us for a while. You could see it back there clearly, so we did a little yaw manual maneuver of the shuttle to kick it across the tail so everybody could see it. Then before we knew it was time to come home, close the payload bay doors, and we had cold soaked the orbiter the night before, so the crew was very happy, but very cold, so that was good. Here's some of the suiting up activities. The first thing you do, this is not necessarily in order, but the first thing you do is put your G-suit on, and then you get into the what we call the pumpkin suits. Nice orange suit, and you'll see Sunny's head popping out here in a minute. She was the most excited, of course, because she'd been off planet Earth for 6 months, so she was really happy about going home. Then you need to put on a harness, and then finally you're ready to go get strapped in to get ready to come home. Here we are, the burn kicking off. That's a timer floating in the middle. Now watch what happens when that burn kicks off. It just accelerates from the dual Ohms engine deorbit burn, and then the next thing we know, we're hitting the atmosphere. You can see a little bit of the plasma in the overhead windows here as Pat's shining a camera on the cockpit. Okay, here's the Mach meter. I was telling you you're going to see this for sure. There's going up 2499 and 250. So that's it. Already we can feel the gravity coming in. That's about 0.6 G, so it's not falling at 1 G yet. And before we know it, we were looking at the deserts of California and making a right hack into runway 22 at Edwards. Shuttle flies very nicely. It's very much like our shuttle training aircraft. When you roll out on final, it feels very similar. Fly about 300 knots on final, and then Brew put the gear down about 300 feet, just a little higher than that. My wife made a comment that she thought he waited a little long on that, but we checked the numbers, it was perfect. Came in 300 on final, shooting a touchdown just below 200 knots. And then Brew put the chute out, and we did the derotation. It was a hot day at Edwards when we landed. It had been 107 degrees the day before, and it was approaching that by the time we got out there. Rolling out on final, of course, your helmet, you've been up there floating around for a couple weeks, and your helmet feels, even your head feels pretty heavy by that point. So we brought it to a stop, trying to get it right on center line. Doesn't matter if you land on center line.
Houston, Atlantis, wheel stop.
Atlantis, Houston, copy, wheel stop. Welcome back.
What matters is when you take the picture after the landing, it's still sitting on the center line. So we got out and took some pictures with it. Here's the crew with all the folks meeting us out there. And then we did a walk around, and we checked out the Ohms pod repair. And again, our congratulations to the team. It held on there perfectly. Well, we're well along on the station assembly sequence. Many more good missions in front of us. It's going to be very exciting to watch this. It's going to be a really first-class laboratory that everybody in here can be very proud that they worked on it. Our crew's really proud. They did a great job on this video, and I thank you for being a great audience.